Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest episode of Blood on the Mic. I'm your host, David Mercado, and with me is Luis
Torna.
And as usual, we'll be talking about all things music, but today in particular, we are talking about one particular band, and that is the 90s alternative rock band, Rage Against the Machine.
Yes, Rage Against the Machine. So I listened to them a lot when I was a kid. I used to like, more aggressive music. I still like more aggressive music, but they were a band that really, that I really liked a lot. What do you think? What were your opinions of the band as a younger kid?
As a younger kid, I never really was able to get a hold of their albums as a kid. But I listened to a lot of their singles. They came on the radio.
Same thing with me, really. Like I listened to their first album. I didn't really listen to their other stuff. I don't know why, really, because I really liked them. Mm-hmm. But I never really delved too far. I didn't really listen to the rest of it for some reason.
Yeah, I definitely heard them on the radio, and I liked all those singles. I mean, they had that alternative rock sound. I mean, maybe they were, a little different than some of the other bands, but they weren't they didn't sound out of context from the rest of the
they sounded like that 90s alternative rock.
Yeah.
Sound.
Yeah.
But and they did the rap rock thing.
They did the rap rock thing, which, when we were growing up in the, mid 2000s, was still kind of in fate.
That was dead by that point, wasn't it? What rap rock bands were happening in the mid 2000s?
Maybe not rap rock, but
Linkin Park?
There was new metal that was coming out. Yeah, Linkin Park was still pretty popular.
Linkin Park was pretty big.
Time. And other bands that had kind of rapping going on, like System of a Down.
They had some influences, I guess, from hip hop.
But rap rock was definitely on its way down. On its decline. There were only a few bands that were still coming out with new stuff, but you can still listen to all of it on the radio. It wasn't like it was.
It sucks kind of that rap rock hasn't really done a resurgence. I mean, there are rappers now that have elements of rock in their music and elements of even emo in their music and shit like that.
Right.
But rap, pure rap rock, like Rage Against the Machine, I don't think there really has been much of that.
Well, just generally, we can spend more time into this, but at least over the last decade, heavier rock, guitar-driven rock, has not really been very popular overall.
Yeah.
But rap rock,
which is also unfortunate.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It definitely had it had a lot of popularity for a long time. So yeah. But
that's a topic for another episode.
Yeah, it's another topic. Right now we're talking about
Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine were formed in 1991. It was actually they were formed because Tom Morello's other band, Lock Up, which was fairly active in the late 80s. I think they even had a deal and stuff. I don't think they actually released anything.
Was it still based in LA?
Yeah. And so that brand broke up in 1991. And so Tom Morello, so the four members of the band, if we should say, Zach De La Rocha on vocals, Tom Morello's the guitarist, then let me see, check my notes, Tim Comerford, bassist, and then Brad Wilk on drums. It's the four members of Rage Against the Machine. So Tom Morello is kind of he's the one that kind of set up the band, or was the leader in setting up the band. And so after Lock Up broke up, he wanted to make another band. So he was looking for vocalists and people like that. And another member of Lock Up suggested Zach De La Rocha and Tom Comerford, Zach to do vocals and then Tom to do bass.
Yeah.
So they got them, and then the drummer was actually... He auditioned for his old band, for Lock Up, and failed those auditions. Yeah. And he also auditioned to be the drummer for Pearl Jam, and failed those auditions too. Brad Wilk.
I guess it's West Coast, but their LA is not that close to Seattle, so
yeah,
that's funny.
I don't know. Yeah, he might have been from Seattle. I didn't look into the drummer that much, but I know that he did audition for Pearl Jam.
Yeah, and speaking of Pearl Jam, next week I believe we're covering.
Yeah, we're gonna cover
a bit of an evolution of grunge, or just
it's
a look
grunge
through
overview.
Grunge?
We're going to cover 5 albums that kind of do an overview of grunge. But anyway, so Tom Morello knew of him just because he auditioned for Lock Up.
Okay.
So he got him in the group because I guess he didn't think it would be a good fit for Laka, but it would be a good fit for Rage Against the Machine. So that they formed the band in 1991. They made a demo tape. There's 12 songs on the tape, and they got signed basically right away. They played one show in some like college play like out in the quad or whatever. And then they got signed to Epic, and the 12 songs on that demo tape, they just took 10 of them, and that became their first album.
It's kind of an interesting time because if you were to look at it, I mean, next week we'll probably cover it more. But once Nirvana came on the stage, a lot of these major label bands started signing a bunch of like the underground bands. Literally anybody who had any sense of following.
Labors,
yeah. I mean, that's how like.
I think that's how the Melvins got signed.
Yeah, that's how the Melvins got signed. I mean, a lot of
basically Kurt Cobain liked them.
Right. A lot of bands who like wouldn't have gotten signed otherwise, or who would have had a little bit more trouble getting a major label deal.
Yeah.
Got signed because of this. I mean, the labels didn't know how to react. It was like all these brand new sounds that weren't popular before, all of a sudden were really popular.
Yeah, and almost overnight, really, like the sound of grunge kind of took over.
Yeah, but like, I mean, it's not that these bands didn't come out of nowhere. Like these bands
didn't come out of nowhere, but the huge popularity of it kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a dramatic sea change.
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, that's always kind of interesting to me. Usually things happen more gradually, but that was something that happened.
Yeah,
very much one day to the next.
But that's grunge specifically. I guess Rage Against the Machine isn't grunge. I
mean,
but
like they
kind of take the same sounds of grunge.
Yeah,
but
they come from similar places, I would say. And actually, I would say that their first album, they had a lot of grunge sounding elements to it. But anything else about their history coming up, or is that like?
So yeah, that's kind of everything about the history leading, at least that I could find on Wikipedia easily.
Right.
Leading up to their first album, their self-titled album, Rage Against the Machine, came out in 1992. So yeah, Rage Against the Machine came out in 1992. One note about this album that it's not musical, it's visual. The album cover, I think, is one of the best album covers of all time.
It's I mean, they didn't put it together themselves. It's a picture, right?
I know, but the fact that they got it, like they used that as their album cover is,
Yeah, I mean, it's a statement. It's definitely a statement. It's a picture of a Buddhist monk setting himself on fire.
Yeah, and if I'm good at editing, I will put it up around here somewhere so you can look at it. So there. And
that's gonna look so dumb
if I don't do it.
Yeah. By the way, if anybody listening to us on the podcast, if this is the first one that we have video for. So if you go on our YouTube account, you can find our handsome faces on there. But yeah, maybe let me see. I don't know if I want to go straight into the first album or have some things to say.
But just a little bit more about the album cover. It's a picture of a monk who's burning himself in protest. And, it's a famous picture, and he burned himself to death in a protest. So, it kind of is a visual representation of like what Rage Against the Machine stands for, just like kind of a violent protest of authority, of all that shit. We'll get more into those themes as we talk about the albums.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot to cover, but they are a very political band. So let's talk about the album Rage Against the Machine, the 1992 self-titled debut. Let's go with you. What'd you think of it?
It's classic. It's just straight up classic. Like, and it's also just the way that they fuse rap and rock is, I don't know, is special for me because they're not just like, it's not just a guy rapping over rock like production, like rapping over rock instrumentation, because Zach De La Rocha does more than just like rap. He's really like a vocalist. He's not really just rapping over it. He's kind of like, there's parts where he's singing more like a punk singer or something, or like a hardcore singer just screaming, and there's parts where he's rapping, and parts where he's really fusing them, where he's kind of just doing a little bit of both, and he's really good at straddling the line between like a punk vocalist and like a rap vocalist.
Yeah. So, I mean, funk punk was definitely not.
I mean,
it wasn't anything that they invented themselves, but like this funk punk fusion. You can hear it in throughout the 80s and bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were definitely more on the funk side of the thing. But there were other bands as well, like Faith No More also had a lot of elements of funk and punk mixed together. And yeah, I mean, I think the band Rage Against the Machine, though they took it in a more aggressive direction in a sense. They have a lot more elements of the hardcore scene.
Yeah.
They don't focus so deeply on the funk and like especially not the kind of mindset that a lot of these other bands had. A lot of these other the bands wanted to make it sound fun in a sense.
Yeah,
And
they weren't really trying
yeah,
to be
Rage
fun.
Against the Machine is definitely not here to have fun, unless unless you consider, I don't know, throwing
Songs
Molotov
with titles
cocktails.
like songs with titles like "Bullet in the Head" and shit.
Right.
Like, super fun, killing in the name of.
Yeah,
They're trying to party, you know.
Yeah, no, they're. And Rage Against the Machine is like, for real. They're here telling you, hey, this is no joke. What we say is really what we mean, and I mean that's definitely something that's maybe a little bit kind of refreshing in a sense.
Yeah.
In that, you know, they're actually very honest about what they're saying, or at least it comes off that way. You know, I will be very greatly surprised if they don't believe the stuff.
Yeah, and like a little bit more about, I guess, their themes and stuff that they talk about a lot, since we're on that topic right now. It's a lot of like questioning authority, kind of bringing light to what people in high places, people with power do, and like how people like abuse power, and basically wanting to start a revolution, wanting to start an uprising, take the power back. Literally a title of one of the songs on there.
Yeah.
You know, it's really that kind of revolutionary themes.
Yeah, it was, and you know, I think what I find kind of interesting is just that they have all these different themes, but kind of putting it at the time that it got released in 1992. I don't know how much. I don't know how in tune that was with like the general atmosphere at the time. I know that like that year is when the riots in LA would happen because of I forget the name of the person.
Rodney King.
Rodney King, yeah, the police abuse of Rodney King, and so you know, it was kind of fitting in that sense, especially because this band is from LA.
Yeah.
But I mean, this was a sound that they had been crafting for a little bit up to that point, and I just find it interesting because I mean, the early '90s did have a sense of pessimism and nihilism in a sense. But it's interesting that this band crafted these feelings into such a political statement when I guess I have a hard time finding anybody else around that time.
Well, I think it's because a lot of the people in like other popular '90s music. Well, let's I don't know. Let's distinguish it a little bit, because you talk about other music in the '90s. You'd be talking about really more of the rock scene in the '90s, like the grunge and stuff, because like hip hop is like they were always talking about these themes.
Yeah,
at
I mean,
least
I
certain
guess
artists were.
Yeah,
but,
I guess like at least message wise, they were more akin to Public Enemy.
Yeah,
than,
they were really more part of that school of
yeah.
like lyricism and stuff. And that, I mean, you know, and it might be because of where they're coming from in LA and stuff. They're seeing that Rodney King stuff, and they're coming more, at least from Zach, is coming more from like the rap background and like in that hip hop culture. And he was just a radical himself, and these themes are never really not going on. These things are never not going on. Like, that's why you listen to Rage Against the Machine now, and it's still like the protests and shit happening now. It's still just as relevant as it was, 30 years ago. The music,
right? I mean, yeah. These are things that, especially a lot of the things that he raps about, are things that keep going on, but. I just find it interesting the timing, like maybe 1992, like I could see like a lot of like maybe a little bit of upheaval happening, but especially as they go on through the rest of the 90s, the 90s were generally a time that was considered very,
at least for rock, it was a lot more of looking inward, of like people's emotions or whatever. People were more sensitive in their music and shit like that, or like. At least, like, talking about people like Kurt Cobain and stuff, like, their lyrics were not really, like, about external issues, more of like internal issues and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, so there's that aspect that, I mean, I guess in a sense, Rage Against the Machine was also, at least in their lyrics and their messaging, they didn't follow a lot of what alternative rock was doing. It kind of stayed true more to, like you said, like the rap, the more conscious rap going on. But I guess also the punk scene has always been eternally conscious about external affairs.
Yeah.
I mean, there were other bands at the time that they hadn't gotten popular, but like Bad Brains was always, singing about
Yeah, and like
different issues.
in looking at the worlds that these people are coming from, they're coming from hardcore and hip hop. So like it's kind of,
Right.
and they were more on that, at least lyrically, that revolutionary side. So, but let's talk about the music, because we haven't even really talked about any of the songs. So like,
Right.
what do you? Because this is the thing. Listening to all these things back, and this is kind of like a spoiler, I guess, for the whole thing. I don't think they have a bad album, and I don't really think they have any bad songs. Like, I don't dislike any song they've ever made.
Yeah, actually, I would agree that, as I was writing songs through, these are my notes, and I tend to write things
Yeah,
in
here's
color
some notes.
according to like the feeling that I got, and yeah, no, none of the songs that I wrote about had like negative connotations to it.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would maybe like, the only album that I will say that's probably not that worth it was just probably the covers album at the end, but maybe we'll
But
get
even
to that.
we'll get to that later. But
Yeah.
I have a different opinion about that. But the first album, to me, I love it, and it has their biggest hit, "Killing in the Name of,"
Yeah.
or "Killing in the Name," whatever. That's everywhere. If you've ever heard any Rage Against the Machine, it's that. And what I love about that song is like, so lyrically, it's just so simple. Like there's barely any lyrics in there, but he gets his point across so just directly.
Yeah, he has a very simple but direct message. There. Yeah.
And like it's got that funky riff that it's just like quintessential Rage Against the Machine. It's like it's like a thesis statement of a song. It's like,
Yeah.
this is what Rage Against the Machine is.
Yeah, I mean that today is still their most well-known song.
Yeah.
And I mean it's got a very strong hook, and that's something to be said about this band, that they consistently seem to have good hooks. I mean, maybe it'll like wane and wax on like,
Yeah.
as you go through, but
But they were good. They had good songwriting in general,
Right.
And especially, I think in this album, I think the songs were more. I mean, they never stopped being like this, but I think they had more like different aspects to them, like different parts and like
what do you mean?
like different bridges and stuff like that, like different musical parts to them. Like it wouldn't just be verse, chorus, and then end. Like they'll have different breakdowns and stuff in them and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
so
like,
I
they vary
definitely-
the songs a lot. And
I
I
definitely
think,
saw that in the opener with what was it
Bomb
called?
Track?
Bomb Track. Bomb Track has like a lot of. So I was listening to it. I saw there's a lot of different segments to it.
yeah,
There's a lot of different aspects, and yeah, that's probably the song that I saw that most clearly in. Some other songs probably not quite as complex, but like that one, I
Yeah.
did think that it was like always jumping from one thing from the verse to the bridge to like an interlude to the chorus to another verse. Like
Yeah.
it just had a lot of like different sections to it. But
So were there any songs that like sticked out to you that were like highlights?
well, I mean, I thought the Bomb Track was good. I mean, "Killing in the Name" is clearly like their best song on here, at least from my perspective. And
It's the biggest hit. I love it. I love "Take the Power Back." That funky, like that's like probably maybe the funkiest riff on there. And
actually, I Take the Power Back is not one of my favorite songs on this.
Hey, okay, you're wrong.
It's-
Like, how do you like? You're consistently wrong.
Look,
on
Take the
every
Power
episode.
Back. Take the Power
just-
Back. I think had like some of the most clear criticisms that I had about the album.
Okay, let's get some of that because I have no Well, I have one criticism. Let me get my one criticism.
Yeah,
out
go
then.
ahead. Go ahead.
So, Rage Against the Machine, they do a good fusion of rap and rock in general, but some songs are clearly more hip hop oriented. Some songs are clearly more rock oriented.
Right.
So, song like "Bomb Track" is like basically like a hip hop song with like a rock beat. At least, but there are a lot of changes in that song. But like for the verses, it sounds like a hip hop song. "Bullet in the Head," some other ones as well. whatever. But a lot of, especially on this first album, the rapping kind of sounds dated. Like the type of rapping, the way he's rapping, sounds
Okay.
like very early '90s, late '80s type of rapping. And like, I'm not gonna fault him on that because it was the early '90s.
Right.
But just hearing when he's just straight rapping over a beat, it's like this sounds kind of old.
Yeah, well, I can get that. I mean, but I don't. I think most of that has to do with just how rap was at that point.
Yeah,
I mean, rap was already
and that's
a,
how
a lot
yeah.
better at that point than it was 5 years before.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm not faulting, like, if we were reviewing this when it came out, that wouldn't even be an issue because we wouldn't even know what rap will turn into.
Yeah.
But like, just in hindsight, I'm like, that's the only thing about it that really dates it, because it does sound like a '90s album. It sounds like that, but
Yeah,
it's
like an
it's-
early. I mean, the rapping does sound like an early '90s thing, like a
But,
Cypress Hill,
yeah.
or like
But musically, it doesn't sound dated. Like if this rapping was on like an early '90s beat or something, like an early '90s just straight hip hop beat or late '80s hip hop beat, I'm like, this might sound too dated. But since
Yeah.
it's on that,
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I have no problem with this type of rapping. I mean, for me, like it only really starts sounding dated, like in a bad way, like really before Eric B and Rakim really. Like,
yeah,
like-
that's like they really ushered in modern rapping.
right.
Before that, it was like
Yeah,
one,
but
two,
I
three.
mean, like, the kind of rhymes that he has, that Zach De La Rocha has over here, they they're not his best. I wouldn't think, like in terms of like how like his rapping
yeah,
abilities, but it's not something that I wouldn't be surprised if somebody with that kind of skill level was putting out records, even today.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of the rap rock that would come afterwards,
they were rapping.
they were
worse than
rapping
him.
probably worse than him. Yeah,
He was the best rapper on rap rock.
he did
period.
he did a really good job. He doesn't sound like he's ever doing it kind of like as a gimmick of any sort.
Yeah,
He-
well, and nothing about Rage Against the Machine sounds like a gimmick. They take
No.
everything very seriously.
No,
and-
even the stuff that's like later on, I'll talk about the more experimental stuff that they did with the guitars. Even a lot of that always sounds like it's fitting.
yeah, and even that, like, it could sound like a gimmick because like a lot of what Tom Morello was doing was, especially on like the solos and stuff, he was making it sound like record scratching and stuff like that at points,
Yeah.
and that could easily come off as a gimmick, but it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't, and I think like the fact that they're so serious on their lyrics kind of makes that point across. Mm-hmm. But
And well, just one more point I want to say about Zach
Yep.
lyrically is that, you know how like rappers will, if they're rapping on a song that's not really about anything, like it doesn't have a strong topic, they kind of have like similar themes that they go in. Like it'll be like, oh, like they just rap about how they're the best rapper, or they rap about how they take your bitch or whatever. They rap about how they're a gangster and shit. Like these are just like rappers have like common themes that they rap about.
yeah, when they have nothing else to do, like
Yeah, when they're not rapping about anything specific, they'll just kind of rap about
right.
the same topics. It seems like for Zach, his topic is how much of a rebel he is. Like, if
Yeah.
he's not really rapping about anything specific, he's just like, yo, I'm the rebel on the mic. I'm such a rebel that I'm this much of a rebel. And I'm like,
He's also always asking for time. He's saying like, "Yo, wait a minute.
yeah.
Can a brother get a timeout?"
Because he needs more time because he's a rebel. But, I mean, why would he be asking for time if he was a rebel? He'd just take the time.
I don't know. He's just like oh, the citizen Zach De La Rocha, your time is seated. You can
He's like,
you're now able
but
to
I'm the
speak.
militant poet. He
Militant
called
poet.
himself a militant poet a
Yeah, he
lot
does,
on the first album. He kind of drops it. I like that. That should have been. He should have kept that up in his later albums too.
I
He says like the militant poet back at it again.
that's the kind of stuff that I'm like more on the borderline about. I think there's. I think if I was thinking about it as a persona, I think the first album, the Rage Against the Machine album, has like a very good, well-crafted persona coming around that fits a lot with the lyricism and stuff. But I will say, me personally, I'm not like. It's not my favorite persona of theirs, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like he's leaning too deep into the revolutionary like aspect of it. Like,
I mean, it's not like they changed that persona much.
no, but it is different. It's different because over here, it like the way that he's sounding. A lot of the songs I would say they kind of offer up this like take action,
Yeah.
overthrow the system.
Yeah.
But there's not as much in the sense of like the why or like what are we gonna do once we do that. Like
That's not what Rage Against the Machine is for.
no,
Rage Against the Machine
that's not true.
is
I
for
think
getting no. That's not what this band
I think
is. The spark.
this first album
Hold on.
I think specifically is like too heavy on that aspect.
You can't be too okay. Rage Against this machine makes you want to overthrow the government. These songs make you want to overthrow the government. Like this is amazing. Like how is that a downside? Because they're not going to provide a clear cut plan on what system of government you're going to put in after you overthrow it. That's not for a band to give you.
These are songs that like a lot of them they're calling for all this action and like they're kind of counting too much on the emotional how your body is gonna respond to the music itself. Like I don't think that there's
it's music.
But like it's good for people who are already on this wave. But like
Yeah.
I don't think this album convinces anybody to join this revolution of theirs. I think this first album to me it sounds like the anthem of like the Chapel Trap House, and. Like,
I hate you so much right now.
I don't think this. I mean, I personally like think that like this album. I mean, I get into the songs obviously, and like they, a lot of these songs like.
So do you want them to rap about fucking policy and give you their 5-point plan on how they're gonna
that's not
do Medicare for all or something?
No, I mean, we'll get to once we get to the other albums. I'll tell you like how like I feel like they progress a lot more with their lyrics, especially as they went on with the second album.
Okay.
Compared to their first album.
Well, there is one song that I think I want to highlight for the lyrics, "Settle for Nothing," because it kind of gives like a snapshot into the mind of like people in like oppressed communities and like communities in poverty and stuff, and why people might join gangs and why stuff like that happens. And he has a line of a lyric caught between culture and the system, genocide, and it's really, I don't know, it gets really emotional. It's also one of the slower songs. It's more kind of like heavy and like really the riffs on it are kind of like a slow metal riff a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that one sounds very grungy. I mean, yeah, it's a metal riff. A lot of these, there's almost particularly, there's a lot of riffs that sound like Black Sabbath kind of riffs. And like that was not anything that was like, I mean that was what was going on at that point. Like it sounds like on the same vein as, let's say, something like Alice in Chains, which we'll also talk about next week. But it sounds heavy, but it sounds like a pessimistic heavy, if that makes any sense. Like
you could say that about all 90s music, but yeah.
Early 90s music mostly had that vibe.
Like the grunge movement and shit.
Right. But yeah, I mean, Rage Against the Machine, I mean, not only that song, there were a few other songs that had like a similar vibe to it. Something that I thought was interesting, that was Know Your Enemy, features a verse from Tool.
Yeah, the guy from Tool.
The guy from Tool.
One, yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of that verse, but like, I thought it was interesting.
I'm not a big fan of Tool in general, but
yeah.
And also because of his voice, like there's something like
it didn't carry the same. His voice didn't carry the same kind of like immediacy or the seriousness to like the issue. Yeah.
But it was kind of cool that the guy's on there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
And it's funny because every time I've heard that before, I just thought it was like the bassist or something that was singing on that part, and then I look it up. I'm like, oh, that's the guy from Tool.
That's the guy from Tool.
I don't really listen to Tool, so I just
right. I only found that out myself as well.
So is there anything else you want to say about this album?
Yeah, there's a few other things actually. Just if I didn't already have things to say. Well, I didn't like I mean, I still liked it. Obviously, I mean, like we already made it a point that like It's not like we don't like any of these songs. All these songs are pretty good. But I thought I wanted more from the last song, Freedom. It talks about tic-tac-toe. I just thought it was a little bit too vague. Like, it's supposed to be about Native Americans. And I just didn't think that message really came across in the song. Like, you would have to, like, read into it a lot to, like, figure that out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think that a lot of, like, the messaging itself could be refined. Like, I think some of it is maybe a little too vague. Or there are some songs, I forget right now which one it is, but there's at least one song in this, there's probably a couple songs in this album that kind of mix a lot of the messages together, where it's just like, the songs are not as focused as they could be. Like, he's writing verses and then he'll throw in a verse about this thing. I know at one point he talked about the weatherman, and like, I didn't think that was the most appropriate spot to talk about the weatherman. Like, I don't know.
Well, it's not like he talked about. He just like
no, he just kind of
them.
like just name dropped them, but like
That's rap. Like, that's hip hop. People do rap. They reference things and move on.
well, yeah. I just didn't think that like I just thought that he could like have organized like his thoughts better, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
And then I mean,
I don't know, because I feel like you feel like he, like, since they are a political band and they're talking about political issues, you feel like they need to be less vague about what they're talking about, or like have more, what's the word term?
well, this is a band where like the lyrics, the messaging is like at the core of who they are.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have a Rage Against the Machine song
Without the message.
without the messaging.
But the messaging is always clear, because the messaging isn't that, I mean, for lack of a better term, it's not that deep. It's, you're being oppressed, revolution. That's what the message is.
Yeah, I mean, like, generally it is. But like, if that's the only message that you're gonna have, that's gonna get old after literally just a couple of songs.
And that, yeah.
So
I mean,
like,
but it doesn't to me.
I mean, if they're maybe to you, but like to me, like, I expect more. So like, for them to have like continuity, like, well, not continuity, longevity, like for them to last, like, they need to not put out the same song over and over again. They need to have something that is
Some variation.
Some variation. Which, I mean, luckily they do have as the albums go on.
Yeah.
But I thought in this album, like I mean, this album functions as a general call to revolution. That's what this album is about. And
I'm glad you took a deeper dive into the lyrics than I did, because you seem to have more specifics about the lyrics.
Yeah,
like, I looked at the lyrics, but then
I mean, I'm not here talking about like, you know, like, oh, he could have rhymed this with this better, or like,
no, but I'm just like, because you look at the lyrics and you like wanted more for them, where I'm just like, oh yeah, revolution, fuck it, because I'm all for revolution at any time. I'm like, somebody tells me to revolt, I'm like, I don't even care what I'm revolting against, just like, let's do it.
Well, like, I'm definitely not like this. I mean, we talked about how like Rage Against the Machine came across. I think when I was there was a time during, like, we talked about this in the Tyler Creator episode. You said that your angsty period ended, what, like 2 years ago or something like that?
That was an exaggeration.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like, my angsty period only lasted for like 2 years, sometime in high school. Like, you know,
I was an angsty teen. I was mad at the world, and I'm still mad at the world, but for more, I guess, for more concrete reasons.
Right.
I guess.
Right. And yeah, I think from early on, I kind of like, I had a more like refined, like,
I know you went to MIT and shit, so chill the fuck out.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a liberal arts degree from a Florida college.
It's just that, like, I don't know, I don't just get angry just because I don't just get angry.
Well, it wouldn't be logical. I get it. So let's move on to the next song.
It's
the next album.
Wait, hold on. There was one last thing, and this might be probably like, at least from a musical perspective, this is like my biggest criticism, and this is like more of a criticism of like the whole rock scene, the whole rock vibe in general in the early '90s. But there's too much of guitar, bass, and drum lining up with each other.
Like guitar, bass, and drum into one groove, and they're kind of doing the same thing. Yeah.
They're kind of doing the same thing, which, I mean, in a sense sounds like lockstep, which I know can be attractive in some senses, but it also leaves too much empty space, like, in between.
If it's too much of that, and that's a slight criticism I have of this album, because I do love this album, but it kind of has one unified sound,
Right.
and it doesn't deviate too much from that. And it's good in I see why they did that, because they were kind of like, they were presenting themselves like this whole album is really a mission statement, and it's really like a call like this. We are Rage Against the Machine. This is what we are. This is what we stand for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it does have. Yeah. I mean, it works in some regard, but I do think that they like overused that throughout the album.
But and I think because of that is like, I love this album, but this is probably the last album I would go to of theirs. Like, if I was just gonna listen to them, like, I'd probably listen to the other ones before this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree as well. But yeah, I mean, that's not because of any lack of merit that this album has.
Yeah, this is still a great album. It's just that the other two are also great. So
I mean, I also think this one is their most important album in a sense.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
it like put them on the scene. It brought this whole mentality to a scene that like was maybe lacking in it. And but I mean, musically, I think a lot of what it's still kind of kept up though, because Tom Morello, I mean, his guitar solos are still pretty kick-ass.
Tom Morello specifically is a genius, I think. Like,
yeah,
the amount he's willing to experiment with these sounds, and also if you listen to his guitar, he's a very proficient guitar player. Like, he has guitar solos where he's like playing very proficiently and like playing fast and doing all the shit, and then he has guitar solos that are just noise and like different sounds, and it's like he's not afraid to experiment and do weird shit. Which
no, he's always throwing in different stuff, and like if a song sounds too it's just kind of rolling along, he always makes sure to like break it up with a solo or like an intro or an outro. I like the killing in the name of, there's like a Middle Eastern thing going on. I don't know if you call that, like, I don't know, towards the beginning. But that's musically
but yeah.
That's just musically what I heard.
Mm-hmm. But we spent far too much on the first album. So
let's
move on. So that was 1992, Rage Against the Machine, and I did not look up what other years the other albums were. I think Evil Empire was 1996.
Yeah, it was 1996, yeah.
But, so, they kind of caught immediate success after their first album. Like, they blew up. Of course, Killing in the Name became a huge, huge single. They went multiple times platinum. Like, I mean, honestly, I guess coming from now and the sound, it's, like, strange to me that they became such a huge hit, but maybe in the 90s it wasn't that strange for a band like this to become a huge hit. But so yeah, in 1996 they released their follow-up album, Evil Empire. A little bit of history stuff that was happening around there. Rage Against the Machine, they did live their what they sang about. Like, they were about revolution. They were about like being anti-authoritarian and going against the system. So just an example of that is they played SNL for like the singles of Evil Empire. They played Bulls on Parade and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they were permanently banned from SNL after that, and they had on SNL they always
Lorne Michaels didn't like what they did.
Well, you know how they always play two songs on SNL?
Yeah.
So they played the first song, whatever, and then they were gonna put upside down flags on their speakers. And an upside down American flag is kind of, it's in the military, I guess it's a symbol of like saying that we're in distress if you see an upside down American flag, and people do that now because saying like the country's in distress. So they were going to do that kind of like an act of protest, because the guest host was what's his name, Steve Forbes.
Oh yeah, it was Forbes. Yeah, I don't know who decided to pair these two together.
I mean, I would have done it if I was working at SNL. I'm like, yes, I want to see what happens. But he was running for president at that time,
which is so dumb. But, I mean, then again, Michael Bloomberg ran this year, so
yeah. So it's not uncommon, and we currently have a billionaire in office,
right?
And a bad one.
Well, billionaire,
quote unquote, billionaire, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were doing stuff like that. And they also, this is interesting, they attempted to do like a North American tour of Wu-Tang at the time, Wu-Tang Clan.
Yep.
One of the best rap groups of all time. We're definitely going to do an episode about them at some point. We have to. But a lot of their shows, the police tried to cancel their shows in a lot of places they went to, stating that their stuff was like against law enforcement and they just were trying to get him shut down and all this stuff. So I mean, I don't know, like, I guess I didn't realize that how much they were looked at as radicals. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean on 9/11, after 9/11, Viacom had like a list of
yeah, I saw,
banned songs, and they just put all of Rage Against the Machine in that list.
which, you know, is like, how that's great PR for your band, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too.
If I had a memo from Viacom saying you're not allowed to play any of my songs.
They were seen. I mean, they were really like the public enemy of the 90s. In a
Yeah.
sense. Like they carried that flag of like, yeah, we're gonna be controversial and like the government's gonna hate us.
Yeah.
Like
So what are your opinions on Evil Empire?
Evil Empire. Okay, first things first. They got a new producer. His name is Brendan O'Brien.
Okay, I didn't even know this. Who was the first producer? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, whatever.
I mean he's not like he's some unknown person, but like I forget the name. But Brendan O'Brien, I know his name because as we'll talk about next week, he was the main producer for Pearl Jam for most of their time. But also he produced a lot of alternative rock in the 90s. I would even go so far as saying that popular, what I guess we would consider nowadays mainstream alternative rock sound from the 90s was perfected by Brendan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Like, he was the one who like, you know, mixed it all and engineered it to like have a particular sound that was different.
He kind of
like,
made that 90s alternative rock sound.
Yeah. So Brendan O'Brien, if the first album sounded more like a Rick Rubin production,
And you hate Rick Rubin.
and I hate Rick Rubin.
Why do you hate Rick Rubin?
Because Rick Rubin leaves too much empty space in his production, and like I
You
hate
don't have
that.
to fill every fucking
No,
part
no,
of a
but, like,
song with.
No, but like you don't have to fill it all like all the time. But there's like a lot you can do. Like over here, the guitars are a lot fuller. There's like overdrive to them in the sense that like it just sounds fuller. It fills up
Yeah.
the space a little bit more. Plus also over here, they start doing more of this kind of effect where like they actually have the bass playing some sort of rhythm,
Yeah.
and then the guitar is playing some sort of like different
Yeah,
filling.
and this album to me, whereas the first album sounded more in line with like metal at parts and like hardcore punk and stuff like that, or just punk, this one sounded more like alternative rock at
Yeah.
points. Like it sounded more, maybe had a little less of a heavy sound than their
Yeah.
first album did.
It has a
And
little bit less of heavy sound.
Embrace that alternative rock a little more.
Yeah, but also there's less of a funk element to it as well. There's just a lot more of that general alternative sound. It sounds like an alternative rock band.
They kind of embrace a less heavy sound.
Yeah,
Slightly less, because it's still heavy.
yeah.
But kind of more in line with like alternative rock than like metal.
Okay. Yeah. No, they definitely do like embrace more of the alternative rock genre. Because I mean, at this point, I think by the early '90s, alternative rock, especially the American mainstream brand of alternative rock, was
Yeah.
less well defined. You still had like your flags that you kind of tended by, like for instance, like Red Hot Chili Peppers. They got a metal drummer, and they thought that was going to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. But it turns out that it wasn't, because you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers, while they were originally a punk-oriented band, now having a metal drummer, that wasn't such a big deal, because in the end, they just all became like alternative rock. Like, I don't know, everything just
Yeah.
kind of fused together into like one.
It's not like
umbrella.
he was playing like blast beats over like Red Hot Chili Pepper songs or anything.
Yeah, no, and like, yeah. I mean, alternative rock kind of fused together a lot of these elements into something that was new. It was like just
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a different sound, and you know, much more heavier sound than what we have now, really, in like
Yeah,
the mainstream rock sound, which I appreciate because I love heavy music.
I mean, I do like it from time to time, but especially as a teenager, I really appreciated
See, this is a
alternative rock.
disconnect we have. Because, like, you can't get into Rage Against the Machine. You're not, like, you're not a rebel. You're not a militant poet like I am. And,
Not naturally, no.
like,
but-
I get, like, this, like, I just have like, as soon as I hear this, my brain's like, yes, this is what I am. Like I live for this kind of shit. Like I love it.
Like if I'm already feeling like this, then yes, I will be like, I need some Rage Against the Machine like right now.
Yeah.
And then I'll get into it. But yeah, it's not like if it's just a random day and I'm walking around doing my thing, and then Rage Against the Machine comes on the radio.
Comes a better day.
Like I'll enjoy the song, but like it doesn't mean that I'm like all of a sudden a rebel. I don't know. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not like a click. I don't suddenly transform.
Buy a chest shirt and
chest shirt, yeah, and like I mean, I don't always see eye to eye with what a lot of they're saying, but something I will say about this album is that the messaging is a lot better. They're a lot more eloquent with how they present things, and I mean, for starters, there's a lot less. They still curse. They never really stop cursing, but like, I've always found that like when you curse too much, it's like a peg leg, almost like you're like leaning on it too much.
Like a crutch.
Like a crutch, yeah. And over here, I don't get that sense from them, especially because they have so many rhymes that are just coming at you. Some songs like they have such a potent message coming across without any, like it's not explicit at all, actually, when you look at it. And yeah, it's just presented so well that even the songs, like it's music that I'm like, okay, I hear you out. Like, in fact, for like, even if I disagree with you, for like, I'm gonna be convinced while you're telling me that this is like actually what it is. Like,
are there any songs that like stand out to you lyrically? Is there any like one that you're so?
Well, I mean, my favorite song on this album, the one that stood out to me the most was "Down Rodeo."
Okay.
So we agree on the least that
because literally just because it has the greatest line ever written, ever. Riding down Rodeo with a shotgun.
They never seen a brown skinned man
since their grandparents bought one.
Yeah.
That's the best
that
lyric written by an American author. That is pure literature. That's, Ernest Hemingway could never. Like, this is the best thing ever written.
Ernest Hemingway could never come close to it. It is a great line. It is a great line.
The arms can, like, be burned in a fire. I don't give a shit if I have that one line.
But I mean, it's not even just that by itself. I think the song itself is great. The hook on that one I think is good enough.
Good enough.
Yeah, because I think like my biggest like complaint about this album is that while especially Zach got so much better on this album in terms of like his flow and delivery, his rhymes.
His rapping doesn't sound as dated on this one. No, he became a better rapper.
Yeah, but while like he focused on that, I don't think he focused enough on making things as catchy as like, and now you do what they told you, and like That's why I think the first album has this one has Bulls on Parade, the second biggest hit other than it has the second biggest hit. So, and like, that one's always one that kind of puzzled me. I never really understood. I think it's a great song, but I never understood why it's looked as highly upon as it is.
That's like, I would agree, just because like, I mean, I love it. It's a great song, but to a certain extent, like, you could put not any Rage Against the Machine song, but like any number of them that were like similar, they could also become hits. I don't know. It's just the one that they chose for it to be a single, and it popped. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it definitely popped. And I mean, something about that song particularly was that I noticed this, like it has a groove, and a lot of the songs in this album have a groove, but even though this is a band that became groovy out of like a funk background.
Yeah.
At this point, they're like far enough away from it that it doesn't sound like, at least obviously, funk. It's like they're grooves that are separate.
They don't have the obvious funk influences anymore. It's not like that funk metal thing.
Yeah, and like they almost like make it fun, like they make it groovy, but like in an aggressive manner.
Yeah,
like, if that makes any sense.
But also, there's also I think some songs on here that I think they're also like a lot less straight hip hop tracks on this too.
Yeah, This album is definitely more just like alternative rock. Like that's
it kind of shoots straight down the middle. It's more of a melding of all their influences instead of like seeing the clear songs that are clearly this way or songs that are clearly that way.
Right. And I mean, just generally, this album, I thought that this album is better in its messaging all across because it takes its surroundings more into consideration. I think the first album that they did was just a general call to revolution, but in a sense, at least to me, it feels like it's not quite it's not quite in line with what was going on in America at the time. Maybe like in particular pockets or like amongst particular crowds, but like I feel like this album, Evil Empire, is almost like holding up a mirror to America. Because like in the mid '90s, especially in '96, like at that point, like economically, America was doing super well. They was not involved in any wars. Maybe like the Yugoslavian war, but like even then, like we weren't really even like we were just kind of like living our best life, like it seemed like, and but they are still being able to create anger about how things are going by talking about things that are, you know, either kind of like forgotten or neglected.
Do you think do you think there's an element of maybe that's why they got popular? Because in the 90s, there was a sense of like looking at yourself, of reflection.
Yeah.
Because they had the luxury of reflection because they didn't have to worry about a huge looming threat like the Soviet Union or a million wars that we're in or things like that.
I mean, there was some of that aspect, yeah.
So it was like a reflection of the country. It's like, look at, like, we toppled the USSR, that's great. The foreign threat is dead. But look at all these domestic threats. And look at all these things that you've been allowed to do to you this whole time. That you didn't know.
Like, I mean, over here, they're just more precise about toppling the American, what's it called? I mean, there's the oligarchy of like the corporations. They're like very specific about that. They talk about like, you know, like even though like you as a listener might be comfortable in your suburban home, you know, they talk about like the mothers themselves. There's a song I think on here about Revolver is about domestic violence. There's songs on here about about NAFTA and like how that affects things with Mexico and like a lot of the Mexicans living in the U.S. themselves, like, you know, they're not treated the way that they should be treated. You know, a lot of this stuff, like they're a lot more like precise about like you know, like you can't they're harder to dismiss as just like, oh, they're just, you know, they're overzealous people. Like, like over here they're like
have more specific topics.
Like surgically attacking you, and like but the songs still groove. They don't sound like they're overbearing. Like they like have a good mix of like that like call to arms, but also like listen to what we had to say.
Yeah.
Like these are the things that you're fucking up.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. So I mean, we agree with it. You guys some comments to say?
No, you kind of said it. Everything. I mean, because really, what Rage Against the Machine is doing is they're not really doing a huge overhaul of their sound or anything, or like changing a lot about themselves. They're kind of just fine tuning what they were doing already. So there's not really. It's an improvement on all fronts, but kind of like a small improvement, not like huge leaps and bounds. At least for me.
Right. I agree in a sense. I mean, I think Zach did get a lot better over here. And I mean, I bet you Tom probably writes a lot of the lyrics as well. But I mean, he's got a PhD, right?
He got a PhD. I'm pretty sure he has a PhD in political science from Harvard.
Yeah, I mean, he went to Harvard for political science. We know that for sure. But maybe the degree itself we're not so sure.
So Boston representation in the house,
yeah. But
we're in a basement in Boston right now.
Yeah, but I mean, instrumentally, I mean, he doesn't fail to impress. Tom Morello's guitar is just insane. Like he continues to like always bring it home. You can always count on him bringing something interesting and new to each song. Yeah, and which is kind of rare, really. Like, I mean, in the 90s, you still saw some pretty great guitarists, but like, especially not long after the 90s ended, guitarists like this were far and few.
There's not been many guitarists like Tom Morello is in the canon of like hugely inventive guitarists, but it's a shame that like people haven't really carried that mantle after him. Like, who would be the next super inventive guitarist after him?
I don't know. I mean, there's other guitars that I can think of that are kind of interesting. Like, I mean, what's that band? The one who did Elvia Cass and like the Widow
And what?
and the Widow, like the Francis the Mute.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, you don't know this band? Jeez.
Francis the Mute?
Yeah, the album Francis the Mute, and then they have the
What era was this? What is
2000s. Like,
I haven't heard of this band. What is...
no, I forget the name of the band right now. It's because I haven't even listened to them in a long time. But yeah, no, there's a few guitarists that have been like inventive,
Well,
but like that follow Tom Morello like that. I don't know.
And also, I think guitars have kind of like gone to the wayside anyway. People aren't like really. Guitar hasn't been a huge thing for a while. I mean, in the 2000s, there was still like a rock culture, but like in 2010s, there's none.
Right. I mean, I think maybe like the Tom Morello style of playing guitar was maybe too difficult for a lot of people to try to achieve, just because it required a lot of pedals and like a lot of like mastery of like how to. It's not just playing 3 chords, right? It's not. You're not just finger tapping. You're waving them.
Okay, so if we're done on that one,
Yeah.
we can move on. So moving on to their last proper album of original music, Battle of Los Angeles, released in 1999. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
So yeah, nothing really. No. At least on Wikipedia, I didn't research enough about the band, maybe, because like it doesn't seem like they've been doing. They don't do much. Like there's not.
Yeah, there's not. They don't have any controversies or any. I mean, maybe like they got
have
kicked
some,
off
like,
of like
yeah.
SNL,
But like not a lot of huge controversy that would be written up. There's one interesting thing that happened in the video shoot for "Sleep Now in the Fire" from Battle of Los Angeles. Michael Moore actually shot that video, and they were filming it in New York Stock Exchange, like outside of the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh, I've seen that video. Yeah.
And what happened is, I guess Michael Moore didn't get the proper permits, so the police were shutting down the thing. And I think they actually arrested Michael Moore. But then, like, while he was being pulled away, he just said, "Storm the stock exchange." So they just ran into the stock exchange, and then barriers came down, like, while they were inside. Like, I guess they have emergency gates and shit for like people trying to storm the stock exchange. So that's something that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm glad that it happened. I don't know.
I am very glad that it happened.
Right. That is a good video, even though I mean it is just them playing outside of the stock exchange. It's very memorable. Battle of Los Angeles. I think that on this album, the bass got better.
The bass got better. I mean, also I think Tom Morello is already an inventive guitar player, but now he went like full on like let me try anything. Because, like, a lot of what he's doing guitar-wise is more spacey.
A lot of it sounds like almost like borderline synthesizers.
Yeah,
in a way.
a lot of these sound like synthesizers. They're spacey, more atmospheric sounds. And also the bass, which was, like, on some of these songs, the bass even sounds manipulated in some ways. Like, the song Testify.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what kind of effects they have on the bass, but the bass sounds, because for that it's kind of like the guitar, at least on the verses.
Yep.
The guitar is kind of just putting an atmosphere on, and then it's just like the bass line comes in, and the bass line sounds kind of like distorted or manipulated in some way.
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know if it was just pedals on them. Maybe Tom Morello got around to teaching the bassist how to like do that kind of thing, but like. Yeah, all throughout the bass is just a lot more interesting than it's ever been.
And I think it's really the guitar giving space for the bass, because a lot of these riffs and stuff that he's doing, like, I mean, it's not really riffs. They still have chorus riffs, like heavy riffs for the chorus and stuff, which is, you know, good because that's like the anthemic part or whatever, like the part that gets people going. But then on the verses, it's usually like the guitar doing something more atmospheric, more synthesizer-like, more spacey, and then the bass kind of fills in that space that's left in with the, you know, sick bass line or some kind of more manipulated sounds of the bass. And
even I think there's a few songs on here that the drums themselves are also pretty good on. Maria has some interesting drums, and then there was Um, well, I mean, I could go like song by song. Like Ashes in the Fall, I think had like a fantastic combination of
Yeah,
guitar, bass line,
I
and
love
drums.
Ashes in the Fall.
Plus, I think the messaging on that one is great. I mean, that's like because like one of the things I have to say about this album, it doesn't sound as immediate or like it doesn't seem as like it sounds a lot more calm, I guess, than the other albums.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't sound as like we need to take action now. Like maybe some songs do bring it across, but I feel like this album, if anything, like sounds almost like a predecessor of like what the Daily Show would be, in like similar to Evil Empires, presenting you with all of these things that are happening
Yeah.
around. But they're not. It doesn't sound like they're telling you like torch down the
Yeah.
Capitol.
It's just like this is happening and
Right.
do something about it.
Yeah. The only one that maybe does is like the last song, the War Within a
Warp in a
Breath.
breath. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't a big fan of that one just because it sounded like a reversion to their first album, and I just thought that like that wasn't what I wanted.
In general, I'm not really a huge fan of their like ending songs. They don't really sound like album closers.
Yeah, I guess you might be right about that.
Like they're kind
Yeah.
of just another song and then the album ends.
Yeah, I mean older songs I think are great standing alone. I would say like
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I don't even think I can't even think of another band. I could probably think of other bands or whatever, but maybe it's because they only really had 3 real albums that their discography is so tight. They don't really have a bad song, something that's like clearly like, oh, what were they thinking, or like, oh, this was a flop. Like I can't think of any song.
right
That's-
is. I mean I have criticisms about particular songs, but like they're still not bad. Like I mean even if a song is on the edge of being bad, there's always something that brings it back.
And it's crazy because it's not even because they're safe or anything. Because they're constantly trying different things and like constantly trying different sounds and stuff. But they just succeed. it's crazy.
Right. I mean, this album does have like though like it has more songs that don't get me quite as like strongly on. Like I did enjoy the fact that he was very self-reflective on "Born of a Broken Man," but and he has these pianos to make it sound a little bit more like he's thinking back about his father and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just it doesn't. I just thought it was kind of like a simple song. It didn't have very much complexity to it.
But it's one of the but in albums that have a lot more like bangers and shit in it, even though this is like the album with the least amount of bangers on it, probably it's not really trying to do that.
It's the least
But-
heavy of the
Yeah.
albums, I would say. But I don't know what you mean by like doesn't have like the bangers. I don't know. In my opinion, I think this album does have the strongest singles, like "Testify," "Guerrilla Radio," and especially "Sleep Now in the Fire." I think
I love Sleep Now in the Fire and Testify is amazing. Guerrilla Radio is one that kind of sounds like, I don't know, it doesn't sound like it fits this album as much.
maybe not quite as much. There are some songs that like do have more of like it sounds like they were carrying over from their previous
kind of
stuff.
sounds like an Evil Empire song, really.
Yeah. But otherwise, like I don't know, "Sleep Now in the Fire" I think is like probably the highlight of this album for me, just because one, the new thing they try out there, or it seems more obvious that they were doing it there, was the loud soft dynamic.
Yeah.
Like it was soft for a while, and then it gets like really bombastic, like anthemic. The riffs that are on there, they're like direct, and they and just generally the way that they fill up the space. That one does not have any empty space at all. That was
Yeah.
like there's never a dull moment. There's always something like coming at you.
That riff on the chorus too is so good. I love that.
Yeah, that song I think is great. I don't know. You got some commentary on this album?
No, I feel useless on these because like you kind of just say everything, and I'm like, yeah, I pretty much agree.
Okay.
Like,
Well, what would you if you had to like wrap up this album as a whole? How would you describe it?
probably more mature, like you'd say. I mean, they matured a lot from their first album,
Yeah.
where maybe the anger and like just the pure anger at everything toned down and got more specific and pointing out the actual problems that are going on and things like that. And musically, they're trying a lot of different stuff and a lot of more interesting stuff and really changing up their style. This is just like more maturation. And I mean, I'd like to see what they would have done after this, but you know, they decided to end it. Well,
to me this album is kind of like a prophetic album. Maybe not as a whole. This album is probably like as a whole, yeah, it's like more of a maturation album. But like the highest points in this album, I think, have elements of prophecy in it, in that they're talking a lot about the thirst for oil, the corporate thirst for oil, and a lot of different issues, and like just the mentality about like the politics. It predates a lot of like the Bush era political feeling, and this is 1999, before Bush was even elected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did mention the election. They talk about Gore and the son of a drug kingpin or whatever. And yeah, you get a little bit of that. I don't like either of them, so I'm not gonna support any of them.
None of the above. Fuck it. Cut the cord.
Yeah, he says
that's
none of the above.
radio.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not. I mean, you personally know how I feel about that, but like
we need to have a political podcast and get my brother on it. And that would be a podcast.
Maybe looking back, you know, there it's because back then domestic issues seemed to like be the most important thing. I think if we had like known about what would happen in the Middle East, I think maybe they would have thought differently. And maybe also climate change. They never even talked about climate change. I don't think it was really a concern.
I mean, it wasn't really a concern in the public consciousness at that time.
Right. But those two issues, I think, would have made a big difference between Gore and Bush.
It would have been interesting to see what they would have said in the Bush era.
Right. But it was almost like I feel like they almost didn't need to be there, because like in the Bush era, there was a lot of like, you know, like that anti-Bush like stance. You know, we
were there a lot of bands that were like so political, and like I don't think there were any bands in the 2000s that were like, I'm 100% anti-Bush, I'm 100% political.
No, but like maybe not 100%, but there were a lot of bands that like delved into it. I mean,
they dipped their toe in.
I mean, like Green Day seemed to have like a political moment with American Idiot. And I mean, even the Dixie Chicks like basically turned away their entire fan base to
say they didn't like write every single song wasn't about politics. Like,
no, but I don't think you always need to have something.
You don't always need to do that, but I think that's why Rage Against the Machine is like special.
Yeah, I mean they're special in that like that's who they are. Like that's strictly who they are. And while you always had like, I think from then on they inspired enough bands to like take on that sort of thing, not as full time as they did, but like I mean, like you'll get bands like, I mean, System of a Down had plenty of political songs. So I mean, so I mean, but I don't think that I'm actually kind of, if anything, glad that they broke up. Is the way that I would say it.
You're the worst.
I listened to these 3 albums, and my thought is, I mean, even already on Battle of Los Angeles, I already kind of feel like they're kind of like running out of steam in a sense. Like they've already said all they needed to say. Their sound, like you said, even though they're always like changing up new things and they're refining the sound. I think that with Battle of Los Angeles, they kind of got to a point where like they, musically at least, they got as good as they were gonna get. I mean, Tom Morello could always give us more guitar solos, but if you were to listen to like what he did on Audioslave, you'll know that, you know, there's limitations to that as well.
And I don't know if that's because of what. Well, look. I don't know, because Audioslave, they weren't trying to do the same thing Rage Against the Machine was, and probably musically as well, because Rage Against the Machine was purposely trying to push music in different directions and stuff, and you know, just even having a rapper on a rock band was like, it wasn't like it became a thing in the 90s, but they did it the best out of anybody.
Right. But I don't know. I just think they like. I think it was a good time to like close the curtains, and I think they. I have a feeling that they probably wanted to like move on, in a sense. Maybe not move on from like politics or like, being active in a sense, but like just this as a project. I think they were just like,
Yeah.
this is good. Like we've done what we came here to do, kind of like thing.
And so yeah, we can close out on Battle Los Angeles, and they would release one more album after this,
The covers
Renegades. It's a covers album. It came out in 2000, and we can touch on it. I think it's more Rage Against the Machine. It sounds like Rage Against the Machine, but it's them doing other people's songs in their style, which I think in itself is an interesting thing to do, and they succeed in it. It's not a bad album. It's worth listening to. It's
not bad. But it's definitely not my favorite.
No, definitely. But
I mean, I'm very particular about doing covers. I think some of these are pretty good though, like Renegades of Funk.
Renegades of Funk, like that shit is a banger, and I heard the original.
It's different enough from the original.
It's completely different than the original, and they made it so good. It's like their most fun song too.
Yeah.
Like period. And it's a
I
cover
mean,
song.
they didn't write it, right?
Yeah. So, but like, it's actually a fun song.
It is like that's a song that you can.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you want to break dance the same way that like the Africa Bambaataa version would.
Yeah. And
but there were songs that I didn't like though, like Maggie's Farm. I didn't like that cover.
I like Maggie's Farm cover just because like on Bob Dylan's version, to me it sounds like lyrically and shit.
Yeah.
At least it sounds like a kid who's working and he's like, I don't want to work because I'm like an artist or whatever. That's what sounds like the message behind the song to me in his version.
Okay.
And in Rage Against the Machine's version, it sounds like people are oppressed working in Maggie's Farm and like, I don't want to work in this oppressed situation anymore. Fuck Maggie's Farm and burn down everything. And I think it was an interesting transformation of the song.
I think that aspect is interesting, but like to further drive the division between you and me, like the Bob Dylan version. One is one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs, and like
Weirdo,
and that's and like the way that he presents it is like pretty much exactly like how I feel in those situations where I'm just
no,
like,
I feel more Bob Dylan's like I don't want to work, period. So, I feel that. But when I hear Zach screaming like I don't want to work in Maggie's Farm no more, I'm like, yeah, burn it down. Like revolution, let's do it.
Yeah, well, Maggie certainly is not a very good person. Doesn't seem like it.
Maggie or her family, that is well described in the song.
Yeah, fuck Pa.
The one of the song that I don't like on the album is Down on the Street, the Stooges cover.
Okay.
And because the Stooges are one of my favorite bands of all time, Down on the song that Down on the Street comes from, Funhouse, is my favorite Stooges album, one of my favorite albums of all time. Mm-hmm. And they didn't really do anything to it. They kind of played a straight cover of it, but just worse.
Yeah,
so,
and like that to me is a bad cover. Even if it sounds fine, a bad cover to me is like when you just don't.
They're not trying anything, and it's weird that they did that because they changed every other song on this album was like a complete change from the original. So I don't know why on that song specifically they're like, no, let's just play a faithful rendition of Down on the Street.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why they would. I don't know, but yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean,
it's just like I don't even know if they meant
like,
to release it really. It's just kind of like, yeah, we have all these covers here, let's release them.
And I like the fact that they did release it because Renegades, like, I think should be out there. It's that like it and
it's nice that they pay homage to like a lot of their influences. Not enough, especially for a band that has like
this many influences.
These many influences.
They cover Devo. They cover Bruce Springsteen. They cover like a lot of different.
I think Public Enemy they also covered in there.
I think they cover Cypress Hill,
EPMD.
Like they have people from all different sides of music. So, if anybody was gonna do a covers album, I'm glad that they did.
Yeah. But that's just like a bonus, I would say.
Like if you love Rage Against the Machine, listen to it. If you I like Rage Against the Machine, it's not an essential album. Listen to the 3.
All right. Should we do our rankings?
Well, yeah, we can talk a little bit.
Or do you want to talk a little bit more?
Just a little bit about what they did afterwards,
Yeah.
because Rage Against the Machine broke up in 2000, citing basically just tensions in the band. They couldn't work with each other anymore.
Right.
They just which happens a lot if you're with people 24/7 for years, like a decade.
Yeah, especially if multiple people have like strong opinions about the band or the messaging or the direction.
Yeah,
etc.
like they decided to break up. Then which is interesting because the entire rest of the band minus Zach made Audio Slave. They
With Chris Cornell.
So it makes me think he was the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I have that. That is no surprise to me.
Yeah. Like they're just like, yes, finally that guy's fucking out of this. Hey Chris, what are you doing right now? You want to get on this shit? I'll do some crazy guitar sounds. You can sing.
And I think it's funny. 90s alternative had so many supergroups come out of it, but Audioslave was like one of the more well-known ones.
Yeah.
And I actually like Audioslave. I don't know how you feel about Audioslave.
I mean, I don't know too much about him. I know like a couple singles or whatever. I can't even remember any other songs right now. Like I should have probably listened to it for this episode, but I didn't.
It's fine. It's a different enough sound that it's not relevant.
It doesn't even sound like if you didn't know it was Rage Against the Machine, you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, but like the first Tom Morello solo that I heard was on Like a Stone from Audioslave, which is still like one of my favorite. Like that solo is fantastic. I mean, the way it fits with the song and stuff, but like. Whatever.
So yeah, they did that for a while, and they recently, they got back together to do some live shows in 2010, and they play together on and off. Now, I don't think there's any plans of them making any new music, but they do still play live shows every now and then.
They do play live shows. They were supposed to do a live I think they were supposed to do a whole tour, but then coronavirus started.
There's also a thing called Prophets of Rage now, which is Rage Against the Machine
with Chuck D. Right?
With Chuck D from Public Enemy and also Be Real and whoever the other guy is from Cypress Hill. And, they do that. I think they also have a couple of original songs that they did. But
I think they put it on an album, but like...
It's basically just a touring band so they can play Rage Against the Machine song,
right.
Public Enemy songs, and Cypress Hill songs.
Right.
So, Rage Against the Machine. There you go.
All right. Should we do the...
Yes, let's do the ranking now.
All right, so now we're going to do the rankings of Rage Against the Machine. And let's see, they only have 3 albums, so I guess 4 albums.
Well,
I mean, I'll just go right ahead and say their covers album is my last one. I don't know if this is...
Yeah, so let's just discount that one. It doesn't really matter, that one.
So
it's last place if you're going to put it on there.
We got 3 albums to choose from. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I mean, mine is pretty simple because it's kind of reverse order.
Okay.
Like, Battle Los Angeles is number 1.
Okay.
Then Evil Empire, then their self-titled album. And it's really not... It's not by a huge margins. Like, it's kind of razor thin margins. All of them are pretty equal in quality. They're all great. They're all amazing.
Right. I would say, like... Yeah, there's not like a huge disparity between the 3.
Yeah, but Battle Los Angeles, I just love the sounds and stuff that they were working with and how they changed their sounds and the different way that they did their instrumentation and their songwriting. I really think it was a great evolution of their sound.
I mean, I think that each album has their own like superlative that gets attached to it. Battle of Los Angeles, I think, was my favorite musically. It was like my favorite to like listen to, especially like you can get lost in like that interplay between the bass and guitars.
Yeah.
But I thought that Evil Empire had the best like lyrical content, the best messaging. I thought that was like when they really, at least lyrically, they brought everything together, and musically it was also pretty good. And then, I mean, their self-titled debut was, I mean, just like popping in through the front doors. That's the one that like everybody that lived through that time period remembers because it was such a shock to like the system. But if I had to rank it personally, I would put by a very thin margin, I would put Evil Empire at the top, Battle of Los Angeles, and then maybe by a slightly wider margin, I would put the self-titled debut.
And that's how it is for me too, where like Evil Empire and Battle Los Angeles, like they're very close. Like
Right.
it's pretty thin margin that I put Battle of Los Angeles over it.
Right.
And
And I mean, like, in the I mean, I've already made it clear, but the production of those two albums, I think, I enjoy very thoroughly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a very simple ranking there. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the least argumentative we've been on any episode.
Maybe I pissed them off a little bit when I mentioned Chapel Trap House, but like,
You're just disrespecting
disrespecting
the revolution.
I think
When
they.
your back's against the wall, I'm not going to help you. When
If
the
it-
revolution's happening and you're here like, well, logically, what are you going to do with the government? It's like, fuck you. What the fuck are you talking about? Storm the White House.
Storm the White House. Yeah, that's definitely not my thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll change your policy with
Yeah.
Joe Biden.
I have maybe some. Not to say that I don't have any controversial viewpoints, especially when it comes to like political assassinations.
Do you want to assassinate people?
I don't want to assassinate anybody. I'm just saying political assassinations are very far and few these days.
Okay, let's end this episode.
All right, this
okay,
is
guys, thank you for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe. You know, I'm new to the YouTube thing. People say that, right? Like, comment, subscribe. Do all
Like,
that
comment,
shit.
subscribe, all of that.
Follow us on Twitter at BloodOnTheMic1. Follow us on Instagram at BloodOnTheMic. Follow me on Twitter at Torno Lewis. You know, tell us what you'd like us to talk about next. We'll gladly talk about anything you want. You know, if you want us to talk about obscure Brazilian music or music from, you know, sub-Saharan Africa or whatever, we'll do it.
Yeah, and our Instagram is fire.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's good.
There's some Jello on it.
Yeah, some jello. Yeah.
Okay, guys, thanks for listening. Goodbye.